Hello, my friends. We are back to Child Life 101, and we are entering into our third week. And this week, we are going to be talking all about having difficult conversations with kids. And so we're going to be talking, the title says kids, but we will really be talking about difficult conversations with tweens, with teens, and some of the different tenets that we can look to when navigating those difficult conversations. So this can be any topic, really, whether it is the death or loss of a loved one, or a significant life change, a new diagnosis in the family, moving schools, divorce, hospitalization that's coming up. These things that we will talk about really can be applied to so many different conversations. And so first and foremost, I will tell you a little bit about how difficult conversations with kids plays out in child life services. Many times we are having to walk alongside families during the most challenging times of their lives. So it actually doesn't feel like just one challenging or difficult conversation. It's like we're having one after the other. You have to have surgery tomorrow, or mom has to leave the hospital for the night, or we have to go through this or that, or whatever the scenario may be. I think first and foremost, at least in my practice as a child life specialist, I very deeply want the parent, the caregiver, or the trusted adult to be the one who is delivering this difficult or complex information. And the reason for that is when kids or teens leave the hospital, they're not going to be with the child life specialist. They're going to be with their family. If we can put together this really beautiful connection between caregiver and their child, and maybe teach them some tools in the meantime to have a complex or difficult conversation, then they will continue to do that beyond the hospitalization. Now, every once in a while, it does make sense for the child life specialist to be the one delivering the news. So here's an example of when that would be very appropriate. I was working in a pediatric ER, and I was actually covering for the day. I wasn't typically in the emergency room, but we had a motorcycle accident come in. And it was a daughter who was about, I would say 15 or 14 years old, who was on the motorcycle with her father. In the accident, her father ended up passing away, and it would be hours before her family could actually come visit and be with her in the hospital. And she was asking a lot of questions like, where's my dad? Is he okay? Is he dead? She was asking all of those questions and wanted to know the answers because it would be a significant amount of time before her family came. Myself and the social worker and the chaplain all came together with this suggestion that it was time for her to find out the news that her father had passed away. And we talked with her mom ahead of time on the phone, and she said, well, if she's asking, let's tell her. So I was the one to deliver the news to her. I've also been in scenarios where parents just don't want to. They don't have the bandwidth or the emotional capacity to share that maybe a sibling has passed away or there's going to be another surgery. And that's really where that team and collaborative environment with child life specialists and families can come together, and we can be the ones to deliver the news. But all of that to say is, of course, there's a spectrum of unique possibilities in which an adult or a trusted adult, whether it be the parent or a clinician, can share this information. If you're thinking, let's just let kids be kids, I totally hear what you're coming from, because it is our intuition to protect them from bad things and all of these difficult complexities that happen in our world. But we have to be really cognizant of the fact that even though we're not putting language, or maybe we're not talking about some of these complexities in the world, our kids are picking up on the words that we're not saying. They hear our tone of voice. They hear the way we turn off the news right away. They watch our body language. They can tell when we're mad or things are upsetting. And so this is why learning how to talk to kids about difficult topics is just an incredible life skill for adults and especially parents. So now that we've gone through a little bit of an introduction about why this is important, let's talk about some of the ways that we can talk about this information. And first, it's important that as adults, we check our own emotional reactions to things. And not that the emotional reactions can't happen. In fact, it's the different. It's to let them happen and really examine what they are and what they mean to us. Start putting names and words to our own reactions. By paying close attention to your own emotional reactions, you're going to be able to better identify those reactions in your child too. And when you show your child how you're feeling, what your true emotions are, you are allowing them then the safe space to do the same in your presence. And you're teaching them how to be brave enough to share with you what they're going through. So let's go back to that first statement we talked about. Let kids be kids. The greatest way we can let kids be kids is if they feel like they have a safety net. And for that to happen, kids need to feel safe with those around them. And trusted relationships are built on honesty and on providing accurate and appropriate information. And so that's really where these conversations all come together. We talked about the fact that kids need to feel safe, and that comes with honest information from their trusted caregivers, and that they're not going to have to guess about what you're trying to get at. The second thing we want to concentrate on is that really concrete information. So if someone has died, it's okay and actually important to use those words, and that we're not trying to explain something that may cause more confusion. So if they just didn't wake up, or they passed away, or they're no longer with us, or they are gone, can be incredibly confusing for a child. So using words like death, died, those are incredibly important for the child to be able to process the words that you are delivering to them. And when you bring up those words, you can be very honest about the fact, like, it is hard for me to say this word because it is really emotional for me. And so you can talk about your own experience in dealing with the words as you're providing the language to the child. You also may not have all of the information that you want to be able to provide for them. And so acknowledging that up front can be incredibly powerful. You can say to your child, this is exactly what I know. There's more information than I can find out, and I can call somebody to find it out. But let me tell you what I know. And then you provide in their most age-appropriate way or developmentally appropriate way. You know, I was just watching Ted Lasso last night. And if you haven't watched Ted Lasso on Apple TV, it's phenomenal. I love it so much. And Ted Lasso, the coach of the soccer team, he has anxiety. And we kind of watch him go through his anxious episodes, something that I very much relate to. And one of the sayings they came up with was find out before you flip out. And I love that because I think we can use that in our conversations with our kids. You know, it might be something that's really upsetting that we can flip out about, but let's find out first. Let's find out together. And so when you come with your child, you don't know all of the answers, come with them and say, let's find out, and then we can flip out together. It's important for them to know they are not going to be alone in those feelings of confusion, sadness, despair. The other thing you can do is start to name the emotions that you're seeing in your child and validate that each of those feelings deserves attention and may flow in and out of each other. So I can tell you're really angry about this. I can tell that it looks like you're grieving this. I can tell that you're really tearful about this. I can tell you're really confused about what I'm saying. And so just by naming what they're going through, you're building more trust and rapport with your child. You can also come at it from another perspective, which is ask them what they have noticed about the situation or process. You can get information from them before you even start the conversation. So one strategy is to say, I can tell that you've noticed that Dad and I haven't been sleeping in the same room. Have you noticed that before? Or what have you thought about that? Or have you noticed that we've been having to go to the doctor a lot, and we've been talking a lot about having to get an EEG or an MRI? Tell me what you know about that. So give them a little information and allow them to use their words so that it's an open conversation and you're not the only one delivering information. So last but not least, let's talk about some strategies to really end these conversations. And when I say end these conversations, I don't mean that they're over. I mean that this initial conversation has come to a close. But the way you close the conversation or whatever you're talking about really has to be intentional. It's important for kids to know that if they haven't processed it fully, they can come talk to you or another trusted adult about what they're thinking or what they're feeling. I love the practice of talking with the child about who are your trusted adults, writing their names down. Is it your teacher, your guidance counselor? Is it grandma? Is it an auntie? Is it an uncle? Who are the trusted adults in your life that if you're starting to feel things or you have questions, who can they go to? And in their mind, that helps them create a plan for who they may seek help or support from when they need it the most. The other thing is when you end the conversation, it may end quicker than you expect it to. And that's because our kids will give us cues into how they're handling it. Here's an example. If I'm delivering information to a child that is not interested, what I'll see them do is continue to do what they were doing. They're not making eye contact. They're bringing up random subjects. And what that does is it tells me this is not the moment to have this conversation. And so I fully validate that. And I say, it looks like you're not ready to talk about this. This is something we're going to have to talk about in a little bit, but maybe I'll come back in another 5 minutes, or we can talk about this tomorrow, or whatever your timeline needs to be. So allow them to have a little bit of control over how the conversation goes and how it flows and when it ends. Ending the conversation on an activity or a moment or some sort of ritual that feels really normal to your family. So if your family always goes for a walk after dinner, or your family always watches the same show together, or if your family wants to come together and draw something or create something together, that idea and that identity that your family is a strong family system will go a long way after a child receives any kind of upsetting or distressing information. We all want our kids to have the best possible life, but that best possible life does come with ups and downs. And so by addressing complex or difficult information alongside them as a partner next to them, you can really help them process the information, be able to deal with it, and then in future difficult conversations, they may have a better chance at coping with some of that more complex or upsetting information. So, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love any questions or comments or feedback. Again, I am one child life specialist who is providing you, the listener, with some of the insight that I have gathered over the past decade plus of working with kids and being a mom myself. So I welcome any feedback, ideas, things that I've missed on this topic that you think would be really, really helpful. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next week.